could describe these brownies in one word, it would be ridiculous. I could definitely see why Jeremy wanted to steal these. I mean, it makes sense. It's a good recipe. Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mina. I'm a culinary school grad and a former professional cook, and usually I bring you recipes. Today, obviously, we have a completely different kind of a video. So today we're gonna be making someone else's recipe. We're gonna be reviewing that recipe, and we're gonna be talking about that recipe. The recipe in question, as you might have already guessed, is the ridiculous brownies by the infamous Boo. Hi Boo. You may have already heard of this recipe. This recipe has been floating around for a while on Reddit, on YouTube, on Instagram. As a matter of fact, you may have even seen all the drama surrounding this recipe. And if you haven't and you want to see what I'm talking about, I'm going to link Boo's Instagram account in my description. You can go to there and you can go check out the post that she has. It explains everything of what's going on. Boo and I had a long talk about this, and like I told her, I don't want to tell her story for her. It's her story to tell, and she told it on Instagram. So if you want to hear it from the source, from the person that it happened to, just go listen to her story and go read what she wrote. If you've been following me, you know that I don't make these kinds of videos. I have made an effort to steer clear of any so-called drama. It's just not my kind of thing. I don't want to bring you those kinds of videos. I just want to bring you recipes. But I had to speak on this. So I've been following Boo on Reddit mainly for a while now, and I have just seen all the work that she puts into her recipes. And we've talked a few weeks back. She made one of my recipes, and I actually have been wanting to make the ridiculous brownies for a while. This is the perfect time to do it. So I'm not here today to shame anybody. I'm not here to point fingers at anybody. I'm gonna do what Boo said and cancel the behavior, don't cancel the person. I'm here to talk more so about the behavior of this and shed more light on the content creating process and the recipe testing process, the grueling, excruciatingly painful recipe testing process. It is not easy. This stuff takes so much time, like literally just hours of your life go away to recipe testing. Hours and hours and hours of your life. If you go to Boo's profile on Instagram, you can see that she has a highlight where she goes through all the testing and all the recipes and all the iterations that she went through to come up with these brownies. And some people may just think, well, dude, it's just a recipe, like who cares, right? It's just a brownie recipe, like what's the big deal? That's one way to look at it, but that's a very shallow way to look at it. And as a recipe developer myself, I know how much work goes into it. And I know when someone else is spending that time and that effort to creating a recipe. And just like Boo, I can also relate to the recipe testing and the note taking. And you could see in her notes that she even wrote down the results of every iteration, like the texture of it and the taste, etc. She was actually doing real testing. And I just appreciate that so much because I understand that work that goes into organized recipe testing like that, you know, like when you actually take notes and you keep track of everything. And you have to keep in mind that these pages that you just see as pages on a book, these literally represent hours of my life. Like this is just hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. Spend a lot of your life on these recipes, and that's why we may be attached to them. Never mind the money that goes into recipe testing, which I don't think a lot of people realize that it's expensive to recipe test, especially if you don't have any kind of a sponsor. It's very expensive because let's face it, most of the things that you're gonna make, most of the batches that you're gonna make are gonna go straight into the trash. They're just not gonna be good. You do your best to eat all the failed batches, but some batches that you just make are just so horrible that you can't eat them. And if you watch my cookie video, the last video that I made, you can see a lot of the failed trials that were straight up so horrible. I had to chuck them in the trash, and that's money that I have to spend on every time to make a recipe. So keep that in mind as well when people just say, oh, it's just a recipe. There's so much more that goes into it. It's not just a recipe. And one thing that no one really talks about is the cleaning. Like how much cleaning you have to do after your recipe test. Probably the worst part. I mean, the money it comes and goes, but your time, you can't get that back. You're spending so much time between all the development, the testing, the research, the cleaning. There's so much time poured in. And that's why people feel attached to their recipes, because you're literally like almost growing this thing and keep trying and keep trying and keep trying. And someone is just gonna be like, oh, cool, thanks for doing all those hours and hours and hours of work. I'll take that and sell it to my millions of subscribers for a ton of money. Unfortunately, this is a common thing that happens all the time, and there's not much that we could do to stop it. It's not illegal, but it's immoral, it's unethical. Ethics and morals are not that prevalent anymore. What we can do is just do our best to shed light onto these things and just hold people accountable for what they're doing. That's it for my little rant. Just remember, don't steal people's recipes. It's a shitty thing to do. Don't do it. Come up with your own recipes. If you can't come up with your own recipes, then credit the people. Credit the people, give them credit, give them money, especially if you're gonna be making money off of this. It's not that hard. That's the end of my rant. All right, let's get into this recipe. So as you can see, the ingredients for this are very, very simple. They're very straightforward. There are not a lot of ingredients. Now, she claims 5 ingredients. Boo, you said 5 ingredients. I counted 7. Technically, there are 7 ingredients, but we'll let it slide at 5. For some reason, you don't have any of these ingredients. You're probably on the wrong side of YouTube. I believe that if you're watching this video, you should have all these ingredients in your kitchen right now. For some odd reason you don't, she has a great post on all the substitutions that you could make to this recipe. And not only that, but she also goes through why she uses every ingredient and the role that it plays in the recipe. And as you know, I love that kind of stuff. So that's why I really appreciate her recipe. I really appreciate that post. And that's why I'm doing this. I know how much work she put into this recipe, and it takes a lot to make these things happen. And she also understands baking science. She has experience with baking just regular baked goods. So she understands how to work with these ingredients when it comes to baking. One thing that I was going to change on the recipe was the sweetener. I am not a fan of erythritol. If you watch my older recipes, you know I'm just not a fan of it. I prefer monk fruit. That's consistently been my favorite in all the baked goods. Erythritol just has that menthol cooling effect that I'm just not a fan of. When I was on the phone with her, I was actually at the grocery store and the topic of sweetener came up, and she said, don't use monk fruit, use erythritol instead because it's gonna give you that crispier crust. And I was like, you know what? Since you're the creator of the recipe, you've tried this so many times, I'm going to take your word for it. I'm gonna buy a bag of erythritol, and it was actually on sale. So that was a good sign. We tried to screen record the conversation between us because it was kind of funny what we were saying at the time, but unfortunately, for some reason, it didn't capture the audio of what was going on. But she was essentially trying to convince me to buy erythritol, and I did. I listened because I would just want to follow the recipe that she made. I respect that. Because again, she said that this will give me a crispy crust. So we'll see what happens. And of course, you know I'm using Authentic Whey from Jack Factory. If you use code Mina, you'll save yourself 20% off not only the chocolate protein, but anything else off the website. And you'll be directly supporting the channel, which right now, all the money is going to fix the camera. The camera is not fixed yet, so all that money is going straight to there. Thanks in advance. Also, I'm using Diet Sunkist. I know the recipe called for Diet Coke. I don't have Diet Coke. I can't go to the store right now to get Diet Coke because my ankle is not that great. So walking is kind of difficult. So I'm gonna go with Diet Sunkist. Saw that people made this before with Diet Sunkist and it worked for them. This recipe isn't so strange either. I remember my mom growing up used to make box cake with a can of soda on it. And I know that Boo actually mentioned this in her Ridiculous Brownie Origin highlight story. Wow, that is a mouthful. Ridiculous Brownie Origin highlight story. And I specifically remember my mom doing this growing up. And Mom, I know that you're watching this. Hi. You remember this? Yeah, now it's a thing. Okay, that's enough talking. Let's just get into making this recipe. So these steps are all pretty self-explanatory, but if you need more instructions, again, you can go to Boo's post. I'm gonna have it linked in the description. You can check it out. One thing I like to do is sift the cocoa powder because as you can see, it's a little bit clumpy and I don't want those clumps to make it into the batter. So I just like to sift it. One common question I get a lot is how much is a pinch of salt? So to me, a pinch is literally pinching your 3 fingers into a container of salt until you get about this amount. Now you can do a heavy pinch, which would be maybe double that amount, but a regular pinch to me is just about this amount of salt.
One thing I wish I did was to spray the paper down with some Pam, because the brownie batter did stick to the paper and I lost a little bit of the brownie to the paper.
The original recipe calls for 360 grams of diet soda, which is just about a can. A can is 355. But I was reading through the Instagram post and she says that you could use less, and it's actually advisable to use less, around 300 grams. I'm gonna start with 300 grams. I'm gonna see how the consistency is. If I feel like it needs a little bit more, I'll use a little bit more. And keep in mind that I used 50 grams of flour. So there was a window of flour. It was 45 to 60 grams of flour that you could use. So I went 50 grams because I like it more on the fudgy side. The instructions said that if you want it more on the cakey side, use more flour, which obviously makes sense. Let's mix this. We're gonna do 300 grams and see how this goes. All right, 300 grams. Is this too much liquid? Oh no, I hope not. I think that looks like a batter now. That's what it looks like. Also, a quick note on the oven. So in the instructions, it said 160 to 180 Celsius. So that is 325 to 365 in Fahrenheit. I went with 350 because that's kind of in the middle, and that's usually what baked goods are baked at. So I just went with the default 350. We'll see how it goes. It may be a little bit too high, but we'll see. But she said that she keeps it at 180, which is 365. So that's a little bit higher. But again, as I always say, these things depend on the oven. Ovens are not always accurate. Have an oven thermometer. Oven thermometers help out a lot. And if you try one, I bet you it's gonna be different than the actual temperature that you set on the oven. I'm gonna be honest, boo, this is a lot better than I expected it to be. All right, so let's talk about the texture first, because that's the most important thing in a brownie. A lot of the protein brownies out there are just rubber balls. You could chuck it at a wall, it's gonna bounce right back at you. This is it's a cakey, fudgy brownie on the inside, and it does have the crackly crust. This is a good brownie. I could definitely see why Jeremy wanted to steal these. I mean, it makes sense. It's a good recipe. Now, I do get the cooling effect of the erythritol. It's not horrible, but it's there. And I know that not everyone is necessarily bothered by it, but it's just not my favorite. So I might try these again with monk fruit and just see how they go. And I also taste a little bit of the soda in there. The next time I do these, I'm gonna try to make it with Diet Coke as opposed to Diet Sunkist, because I think the orange is giving it kind of an off taste. There is just a hint in the back at the end of like orangish. It's not bad, but I want to see what it would be like if I used maybe, ooh, how about Sprite? I know that Sprite pie is a thing, and it's actually on Boo's origin. So if you go on her Instagram, which you really should go on there and check out the whole origin story of the brownie, just go and click through, you're gonna see that one of the slides talks about having Sprite in a pie, and I've seen those lately on TikTok too. So with my ingredients, mine came out to be 450 calories with 40 grams of protein, and that's excellent. Yeah, this is definitely a winner. If you haven't made these, definitely go make these. Like, just go make these, trust me. Have I ever steered you wrong before? I won't on this one. Just go out there, try these brownies. Make sure that you tag Boo on Instagram when you make these brownies. I know that she loves to see all these creations too, so make sure that you tag her on Instagram. As I said before, I'm gonna have her Instagram down below in the description box. Also, if you make any of my recipes on Instagram, make sure to tag me on Instagram. I also love to see what you guys are making. I love to see your creations. I love to see what you come up with. Follow on Instagram if you wanna see all the behind the scenes stuff that you won't ever see on YouTube. There's exclusive content on there as well. I also have reels on there that are not on YouTube. So if you want more of that content, of short form content, go to Instagram. If you wanna see me review other recipes out there, leave me the recipe in the comments and vote on that comment. Let me know what you want to see me review. Maybe I'll review some other recipes, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.